Hello, everyone, and welcome on in to the very first episode of our brand new, we don't even have like a name here, Chris, but welcome on into the brand new college football props show from Unabated. I'm Thomas Viola. He's Chris Kay, and all season long, we are going to be coming to you, breaking down some college football props using our Unabated prop simulator, and of course, our projections from right here at Unabated that, Chris, you are a massive part of making happen. So before we get started on any of the props here, why don't you tell the people a little bit about yourself and what you do over here at Unabated?
Yeah, good to be here, Tom. Just been doing college football content, whether it's just like writing or playing DFS for maybe like 10, 12 years now. Been working with Ben and Glenn, who the three of us help create the projections here at Unabated. Been with them for like 5 years now. So I joke that I talk to Glenn and Ben more than my wife in the fall, which is honestly 100% accurate at this point. But it's a good time. We've had a lot of fun with it over the years, and being able to come to Unabated and provide that for concierge premium members has been a lot of fun. Good challenge, and it's this is like the best weekend of the year, Tom. So what a great way to start.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Hopefully we get some liveliness in the chat. Moving forward, we're like, week one. This is a little bit of our week 0 here. We're testing everything out here, figuring out the best flow forward. So we've got a bunch of stuff that we want to talk about today. But moving forward after this, hopefully we'll have pretty much the whole slate ready to go for people so that they can throw their questions in as well. But this week, we got plenty that we want to talk about ourselves. And we already got a question in the chat from CC Does Mobile. Do you guys model touchdown scores? I believe that's a question for you.
We do, yeah, but it's not something we release. Honestly, it's not something we typically would bet ourselves. So it's not something that we would then provide. Everything that we do is 100% confident and comfortable. So that's why you ask, like, hey, are we providing games for yesterday, the Thursday games? Everybody was playing FCS matchups with no depth charts for a bunch of teams. It's just, considering the amount of options that we had the entire weekend, we just decided not to waste any time on those games, focus on the ones that we felt good on. And so no, we don't typically do touchdown type stuff. If you have a question, hit me up in the CFB Alpha with a specific player and I can give some insight, but not something we'll release to subscribers via the tools.
Exactly. We want to make sure that that anything we're giving out, like you said, we're 100% confident in. And quite frankly, the thing with touchdown props is it's just such a high hold market. It is very, very difficult to be finding good plus EV bets in there. Another great thing that you pointed out, we do have so many games and things that we have to model out, things that we have to do. How do you guys handle it with all of the different games, all of the different players? Because it's a heck of a lot more than the NFL with 32 teams.
Doing this for 5 years or so with Ben and Glenn, we pretty much have an idea of what the different sites are going to release. We typically we work with like the DraftKings, FanDuel, DFS slates and just start pumping out those projections and start with the teams that are a little bit more straightforward, especially middle of the season. Some of these teams, we can spend 20 minutes on and have a really good, feel for what's going to go on. When we get these question marks about injuries at quarterback or maybe a star running back, we'll kind of wait for the end of the week to try to get to those and just prioritize those ones that are a little bit more straightforward. But yeah, and then, really it's about the games that I think people want to watch, right? Like if Michigan plays Ohio State, like we're going to make it a priority to have those props available as long as we feel good about it. So we always look at like the big games of the week, making sure that if there is a huge game on a Thursday or a Friday or something like that, and it makes sense for everybody, that we make sure that we get those handled. So after so many years, you kind of just go on autopilot and how to handle each team and which ones will be having props, which ones won't. So, and we might honestly on Saturday morning release a few more teams just because some props came out or there was a decision on a quarterback or something like that too. So it's kind of a play it by ear for some of these teams as well.
Exactly. And that's another thing that we have for you at Unabated. Let's face it, we're going to be a little bit of a commercial here for ourselves. That's what we're going to do. But we also have college football news, and it's a fantastic source for college football news, a great way to get all of your information aggregated to one place so that you can be saying, okay, cool, here's all of the latest, here's all the important stuff that I need to know, from injury news to roster updates and everything in between.
Yeah, more teams are doing the old injury reports, but even then, it's left a lot of question marks. So, some of the different coaches will almost like be passive aggressive about it. Like PJ Fleck at Minnesota, he basically will say, "Hey, I don't have to tell you anything on a Monday or a Tuesday because you're going to get an injury report on Saturday." And so then you pretty much, and honestly, kind of hurts us a little bit because we don't have an idea of where people are going to stand. So now it delays it, but they're moving slowly. But until then, there's 7, 8 conferences that don't have anything standardized. And so that's where that news section definitely is a benefit.
Absolutely. But for now, I think it's time, Chris, that we start getting into some of these games here and start talking about some actual props that we got going on. We'll go game by game through the Friday slate here. Nothing for Lehigh Army, but we'll start off with Temple, Oklahoma. We're going to be going into Oklahoma here. And by the way, CC does mobile. I see you with he's wondering about McAllister for TCU at a plus 325 for an anytime touchdown. We'll talk about that game. If you have anything there, keep that in the back of your mind. Stay tuned, CC. We'll get that question answered for you. But right now, Chris, where do you want to go first in this Oklahoma matchup? And I'll throw it up on the screen here.
Let's start with the running backs.
Let's
this is a group that if you've done props in DFS for Oklahoma for years, you'll know that there's not really ever a true starter unless there's some superstar. This year, Gavin Sawchuk comes into the season. You'd think he'd be the RB1. And now everything in the fall is pretty much kind of suggested that he might, that Javonte Barnes might be the guy. The coaches love him for some reason. He was lingering foot injury last year. And so Sawchuk has a really interesting over 78.5 on FanDuel. So really interesting there.
what do you have? What do we have as his projection?
88.5 yards.
On
13 carries. So I think reverse, but yeah, 13.1 carries.
All right.
They have a really good matchup against Temple, right? Some of these running backs, you take two runs and you hit the number. But yeah, so him and Barnes are going to be the guys in the competition there. Sawchuk was awesome the final 5 games of the season last year, but Barnes has somehow made it a way where it's a little bit of a competition or a committee of sorts.
So where are you looking exactly with this Sawchuk prop here?
I think the 78.5 at FanDuel makes the most sense, right? You can look at some of these ones like Underdog and Prize Picks. I still like it in the mid 80s, but I'm in Georgia, so I can't do FanDuel, can't bet DraftKings Sportsbooks, things, MGM, stuff like that. So I'm really targeting, the underdogs and the Prize Picks. And that number's actually shot up. I think it started in the 70s and now it's in the mid 80s on sites like Underdog, which is interesting to see. But I think the public agrees.
Yeah, and you're seeing some pretty interesting numbers here. Like you said, that FanDuel number is at 78.5. We're seeing some 81.5, some 80.5s, a whole bunch of different stuff here from the books that have it open. So yeah, looks like we're reading the market pretty well there when it comes to Sawchuk. What do you have next up on the slate here? Anything more from Oklahoma?
So receivers, as much as so this is a Friday game, so we were never really truly considering releasing this, but we could never release Oklahoma due to their receiver group. So Deion Burks is the guy. He transferred in from Purdue, huge spring game. Then it comes out part of this whole new injury standardization with the SEC is we know that Nick Anderson, who's the receiver 2, is out for this one. And then Andrew Anthony, so he got hurt mid-October last year. I think it was like a torn ACL. They say he can play this week. So there's a lot of question marks. I don't buy it. I don't buy someone that tore an ACL in October is going to be full strength week 1 against Temple. So I think there's going to be some limited snaps there. So that's what's made that one a little bit more challenging is figuring out what that split or what that might be. So we have Deion Burks at 7.2 targets for 73.3 yards. So that marks out at 4.7 receptions.
Okay.
So
what did you do for the yards there?
73.3.
All right. Let's see if we can fire up the simulator here and get it to work. And there we go. We're seeing a slight edge on the under here.
Yeah, that's the challenging thing, right? Is we feel really good about the usage, but it could easily not go that way due to all these targets being lost with Anthony and Nick Anderson. Does Jackson Arnold funnel those targets that way? Jaleel Farouk is an interesting one. He played a bunch last year, but and was supposed to be the guy, but then Drake Stoops came in and was that really clutch slot receiver for them. We have him at 3.8 catches for 56.4 yards. Challenging because I don't think he's just any good. So it's hard to want to trust numbers sometimes when you just don't think a player is good. It's just more opportunity. And we don't like anything here with the edges. So it's always positive and nice to see that kind of confirmation there.
Yeah. So maybe this is one that we watch out for and you're looking for later on in the season.
They're going to have a really solidified usage. Like we'll know week 4 what they're trying to do. We'll have those splits. That's one of those things where injuries in week 1, no true depth chart really to help us out. Especially, I think they're like a 40-point favorite against Temple. Like they could throw it 20 times, period. So if you're going to bet something on this, I think like the under on Burks is potentially interesting. Otherwise, I would just stay away and look at some of these other games because I think there's some really fun lines in like the Stanford TCU game, for example.
Yeah. Should we go to that Stanford TCU game next year? I know we want to get to Michigan State and we also have Wisconsin, but let's go to Stanford TCU here. And why don't we start off while I'm loading that up? Where do you want to go first? And then we could talk a little bit about his CC's McAllister prop there.
Yeah, let's look at TCU's pass game. So start with the quarterback. Josh Hoover is the guy here that's taken over at quarterback, and he throws it a ton. This passing yard number is really interesting. This is one that's seen an increase since it was released Monday, Tuesday-ish. So it started around 274-ish, and now it's in the mid to high 280s. We still like it.
Mm-hmm.
I could see him throw it 45 plus times. This is an offense that will throw it a ton. This is a rare, interesting situation. We love the over on Hoover. We like the under on every single one of his receivers.
That is really interesting. Why?
It's college football because this is kind of like SMU. They use everybody. They're going to use 4 to 5 different receivers, and their tight end is going to be a really quality player. He transferred in from Baylor, and so he's been good. His number is line. So if you want to move over to the receivers or those receiving yard props, there's a bunch of different guys. McAllister coming into the season, we all thought, hey, he's going to be the receiver 1. What's interesting is he came in from Boise, and where their coach was Coach Avalos, who's now the defensive coordinator. So you think, oh, there's a positive trend here, except for the fact that McAllister essentially quit on the team in like week 8 and said, I'm going to the portal. So for him to follow his coach was the most interesting, baffling decision. And now we see the depth chart come out and McAllister's second string. So to answer your question on anytime touchdown, I would avoid that one for sure.
Yeah.
Not something I would suspect is going to happen.
How about the Savion Williams number, though? We're seeing a pretty good edge here from our friends at Bet Online. Nope, that's Bovada. Yeah,
Savion's the presumed number 1 target here. He's gotten a lot of hype in the last couple of weeks of fall camp. He was a guy that last offseason had a ton of hype and then just kind of flattened out. Quentin Johnston, which looking back on it, maybe we shouldn't have taken his opinion for anything, considering how he's performed in the NFL. Quentin Johnston was basically like, hey, Savion's going to be the guy that replaces me as like the alpha receiver. Last year, he pretty much did not a whole lot. This offense is going to throw it a bunch, but they're going to throw it to 4 to 5 different receivers. And so that's why you see these unders on Savion Williams at that 64.5. If you have it available, I like the receptions under of 5. I think that was on Underdog at some point this week. I like that one better. I typically lean receptions, but nobody ever lets you bet receptions, right? These sites stick to yardage.
Yeah.
So I like the Savion under receptions, but I think the 64.5 is totally viable. If you look at what we've actually projected for him, 6.5 targets, 56 yards. So that feels pretty good going into a game against Stanford, which could become a high scoring affair, but I'm going to bet on the fact that they'll use 4 to 5 different guys instead.
Yahtzee says, just got in. What did I miss? Nice to see you in here, Yahtzee. You haven't missed much. I think the only the thing that we've been liking the most so far is Savion Williams here. I think that's safe to say.
Yeah. And if you, definitely. And which is really interesting is if you play the Underdog Prize Picks, you can correlate the two, almost like reverse correlate, right? You put
Yeah.
Hoover. We like the Hoover over. We like the under on Savion. You get a bit of a profit boost on those parlays on underdog and prize picks when you do it, which is funny because typically you see correlation and it kills the payout. But in this situation, you actually benefit from it. So if you're playing underdog and prize picks and those are available,
Mhm.
that's something for you to take a look at.
Yeah, and we will talk about we'll bring up the DFS pick simulator here after we get through some of these games. So we'll talk about more on that underdog and prize pick stuff. Yahtzee says he's got minus 119 at Caesars. Depends. And meanwhile, John Charles says he found under 5.5 receptions plus 115. CJ for Days says Fliff has receptions. John Charles, wherever you found that, that seems like a pretty good number to have on that, doesn't it?
I mean, we have him at 6.5 targets.
Mhm.
So that's a pretty, typically these guys are catching somewhere between 60 and 68% of passes thrown their way. So that's a really good number, that 5.5 under, especially I think you said plus money, right? So
Yeah.
that's
Yahtzee's found minus 119 at Caesars if that's still a buy there.
I think that's a really solid bet. 5
Mhm.
receptions. It's honestly fairly likely it just kind of pushes.
Mhm.
But it wouldn't be surprising at all for
Well,
him to
good,
end with 3-4 catches.
yeah. Good news is it can't really push at 5.5.
Well, right, the 5.5 for sure.
Oh, Yahtzee's got for yards. Yahtzee's got minus 119 for yards at Caesars. Yeah, that looks like that's still pretty good because we got a 19% edge over there on the Caesars number at 64.5. So that's something that I would definitely consider playing here. Matt Locklear says Bet 105 has under 5.5 plus 120. And GP36 says probably B3, all their reception lines are grossly mispriced. Looks like we found some edges here already.
Yeah, I didn't
Getting a
know
good
that these
start.
would be I didn't know that these would be available like that, but I really like those. If you have the option, I would definitely choose the receptions under instead of the yardage.
Mhm.
TCU does tend to be a little bit more big play driven. Think about those like Max Duggan teams where they would go 3 plays, 80 yards. Like that, there is a little bit of that, but there's also with that a lack of efficiency. They're more volume
Mhm.
from a passing standpoint. One player that's super interesting is this Drake Dabney line. Uh, I look at this stuff literally every single day, but Dabney's number has gone up significantly. I want to say it started in the mid 20s. And at that point, we love the over, right? We have him around 37 yards. Now it's all the way up to 37.5 yards. And now we like the under. I tend to lean the under there, even though I, would have said 3 days ago, bet over on like the mid 20s. He's a good tight end. Some of these tight ends are hard to when you transfer teams, tight end or freshman, right? Those are the hardest to translate into a new offense or into college period. So I could see there be a slow start for Dabney, who I think is a good tight end, but brand new in the offense. It wouldn't shock me at all with this under. I think that's a very solid play as well.
Interesting. A lot of good stuff here. Anything more in this TCU game you want to look at, or should we head
Let,
over to Wisconsin?
let's go to the running backs real
All right.
quick. There should be a rushing line here for Cam Cook. And Trey Sanders. So Cam Cook is really interesting to me because true sophomore, didn't really get much run last year, but he is the presumed number one guy. Had a really good spring. Trey Sanders transferred in last year and kind of was like a thorn in Amani Bailey's side for a little bit, but this guy's come off multiple ACL surgeries, I believe. He's kind of a former 5-star type from Bama that transfers out and just hasn't done much. Cam Cook should very much be the guy.
Mhm.
We have him because obviously we do DFS and some other stuff. So we definitely build these out even if they're not releasing them. We have him, I would say, fairly conservative on usage. Now it is week 1. You don't know how things are going to shake out, right? Like Trey Sanders is a little bit of a thorn in your side type, but that number being 64.5 is, to my opinion, just too low. It was mid 50. This is another one, mid 50s, as early as this morning, I think. So that's one that's been hit pretty hard over, and that's why you see it in the mid 60s now.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
that is a big jump.
and TCU is known for giving their number one running back a ton of carries. Kendre Miller, Amani Bailey. These are guys that routinely were like 46 to 55% of touches on the ground were theirs. So you should, in theory, see some really nice usage on the ground for him there.
Poor Kendra Miller. Now he gets cyberbullied. Now he just gets bullied by Dennis Allen every week.
What a culture that is, right? Every time I laugh, every time it's just the most incredible quote. Just
Yeah.
awesome. This is a really good game because I think the Stanford stuff is kind of fun too.
Mhm.
Not as much as the TCU ones because we're continuing to look at unders, but
Yeah.
this could be a fun game. This is a nice nightcap of a game. I think it's on ESPN, but it should be a fun game.
Anything else you're looking at here? Shall we scoot on over to Wisconsin?
No, I think if are Stanford options available or
Yes.
I was
Do you
just
want
gonna
Stanford rushing?
receiving.
Okay.
The run game for Stanford I would avoid. Strictly because they're going to use a little bit of a committee and they're going to be super heavy with their quarterback runs. So I would avoid those kind of running back numbers until we start to see some games happen.
So how about here for the receivers? Because we had the lines in already for who are you looking at in the receiving core for Stanford here?
So it never gives you the tingle, but Alec Ao Manor is their number one. We have him at 79.4 yards on 5.4 catches. He is a big play machine. You remember him from, I think he basically mossed Travis Hunter last year in that Colorado game.
I remember that.
If this number were to go a little bit lower, this would be like a for fun play, like just a little bit of something that you want to watch at the end of the night type of thing. He could have a huge game against TCU, but none of these edges look right. They were a little bit different earlier in the week, but looks like they've kind of hit the middle where everybody looks the same.
Yeah, we're getting to that point there. Let's see. We got some questions here. Now, keep in mind, you are absolutely the college football expert. So some of these guys, I'm not as versed on. John Charles asking for thoughts on Justin Lamson anytime touchdown score at plus 170. I mean, he scored in 5 out of 12 games last year, so that's goal line quarterback. I don't know. What do you anything?
It is conceivable that he's the third quarterback on the team right now. They have a true freshman they really like. I would avoid that just because Daniels is going to be the guy. He runs himself. He's a bigger guy, I believe. I would avoid it just because betting on a touchdown for a backup is a little bit more is a little bit riskier than I would like to bet on. And then it's possible Lamson plays, but you're looking at low usage if he does. They kind of played around with multiple quarterbacks in the same game last season, but I would avoid that.
How about Cedric Irvin?
So I don't know if there's any lines on Cedric Irvin. He's one of those running backs he's one of those running backs I was mentioning. I think he's the most talented guy in the room, but fall camp, they've pretty much basically said it's like a running back by committee. So I would, unless the numbers, this may be a situation where if you see a line for a Cedric Irvin at like 75 yards for some reason, 68 yards for some reason, then I think an under is certainly in play. But I don't suspect they're going to release anything for him considering the murkiness.
John Charles, he's got the inside information here. He says, I know his family well. He's the number 3 for sure. They just like him on the goal line. So
he's talented. I like him. I have him in some of those underdog best ball drafts. I wish they would just commit to him, but we'll see.
All right. Now, how about the Wisconsin game here?
Yeah. So let's start with the running backs.
Okay.
There should be some rushing lines here. So this is one where Ches Malusi and Tawi Walker. So Tawi Walker was actually one of those Oklahoma running backs that made it very frustrating last year. Tawi Walker and him, they in theory should be in a pretty even-ish split. We have Walker at 13.3 attempts for 75.6 yards. And then we have Ches at 12.2 attempts for 69.9 yards.
Nice.
Very nice. So it is a really close split. I'd like to see a little bit more. This is a team that even if they played tomorrow, I wouldn't have released them. We wouldn't have released them just because there's a little bit of question marks about what's actually going to happen here. Good matchup. They should be able to run the ball well against Western Michigan. So we'll see what happens with these two.
Yeah, I'm guessing that we should have an edge on the over here. I think we need to talk with engineering a little bit because it's not quite showing up for us here. But
Yeah, I think the over on these could make a lot of sense.
mhm.
Um, it's a matter of how much Phil Longo's the offensive coordinator there. I could see them very much getting ground and pound. Ches Malusi was really good through 4 games before he had an injury that lost that made him lose the rest of the season. You're a Jets guy, right, Tom?
Yeah.
He actually, I think everybody that watched Wisconsin that first month would agree that Ches Malusi looked better than Braylon Allen, which
Ooh.
was shocking because Braylon Allen was one of those like superstar type running backs going into the season. He just kind of looked slow and stiff, and then Ches Malusi looked great, but then he got hurt.
Mhm.
So that's why I think Ches is going to be that number one. Walker slightly behind, but I think both of those could have some big games today.
Yeah, we will have to see. I will say I'm excited about Braylon Allen. He's looked good in the preseason so far.
Yeah, he had I think he had that huge preseason game, and everybody started hyping him up. It
Yeah.
was good to see. It was surprising to see him go a little bit late, but in the draft. But
Yeah, I think the
that's
Jets
good.
might have gotten a steal there. I'm hopeful for that.
Let's go receiving yards. I think there should be something here to talk about. This is going to be very much the Will Pauling show. He's going to have a high command of targets,
Mhm.
but the ones that are interesting, it's these Big Ten tight ends. The Big Ten tight ends everywhere. For some reason, these sites like releasing props for them.
Mhm.
So Riley Nowakowski, he's just your run of the mill tight end for Wisconsin. Like there's nothing special about him. We have him at 6% of targets, which is just 2. 17.4 yards, 1.3 receptions. I've seen a 1.5 number on his receptions for
You said how many yards? 17 point.
Yeah, 17.3 is good. So I've seen 1.5s. That is a really interesting under. So if you can find an under on the 1.5, I think that's a solid route to go. The number has dropped. It used to be most of the places when I was looking at it earlier this week was around 13.5 or 14.5, as like you see at Caesars.
Mhm.
That 10 though is interesting. I don't usually like to bet the overs on these tight ends in Big Ten, but when they go that low when he's the starter, I can see why we like the edge there a little bit.
Yeah, you figure he's that low, and you only need 1 10-yard pass at that point.
Right. There's also this Tyrell Henry.
Mhm.
He's not even on the depth chart.
Wow.
Like I don't know why or where this popped up.
Mhm.
So you may see. I can't even tell you a projection for him, Tom, because we don't have a projection. Like he is a tight end for Wisconsin, but he's at best their 3rd tight end. If there are lines out there like this 16.5 on Caesars, I'm not saying like hammer it, but I'm saying like I could see him see limited snaps. Like I could see him playing 10 snaps.
And I mean, this is something that we definitely talked about this last year a lot, maybe not obviously not on a show, but definitely in private a little bit, of the edges that you can find, because you would find a lot of stuff where you were like in the unders on these 4th, 5th, 6th guys on the depth chart who just aren't going to play, but they're going to get a snap or two where they're just run blocking, and all of a sudden you got a great play on their under half a reception or under 3.5 yards.
Yeah, I mean, Henry's route to playing time is likely just big formations at the goal line.
Mhm.
They're not going to run like he would have to have like 3 catches from the 6-yard line, 3
Yeah.
touchdowns for 3. Yeah, this is college football for you. You're going to get the weirdest, most random lines. Sites are going to misprice stuff. Put Tyrell Henry lines out there. This is probably, if you ask Captain Jack his thoughts on this is probably a way to get limited.
Yeah.
But a really good example, just to tell you how the college football market can be at times. Earlier today, like an hour or 2 ago, MGM put out Virginia Tech running back and receiver lines, except they reversed them.
Oh.
So the receivers for Virginia Tech had rushing lines, and the running backs had receiving lines. So like I had a buddy, and I'm sure he's gonna be limited in like an hour. He was betting like their receiver 2 for under 47.5 rush yards.
Mhm.
Yeah, those are the types of things that some of these sites do. So what I would say is,
real quick, just to cut you off there, this will 1,000% get you
Yeah.
limited and kicked off. Do not do this.
but that just goes to show, it doesn't need to be that egregious of a line,
Yeah.
right? Like, but there are things out there that won't get you limited that are still like, okay, that's a bad line type of thing. So just kind of be on the lookout as the more as you listen to the news and follow the news at Unabated and just get into the college football season, you'll spot some of these. And that's kind of the timing is, as everybody knows, is everything, especially in college football.
Yeah. Yahtzee saying who puts out these projections. Yeah, Yahtzee missed the beginning here. It is the team of Chris, Glenn, and Ben here at Unabated. These are our own numbers here. GP36. I think GP36 is saying that those lines are with the reversed Russian receiving are still up.
That's crazy. I don't know what I don't know what I would do in my shoes if I could bet it. Would I tempt fate?
I don't. I think that is a massive
red flag.
TJ for Days says drive to an MGM kiosk for that. That's probably the right move there.
Yeah.
But yeah, do not bet those on an app. That is my biggest piece of advice.
Yeah, I would think Captain Jack would say expect that to be limited by the end of that Virginia Tech game. Yep. So that just is an example of how this market can be. Tyrell Henry is a bad line. Like that shouldn't be out there. But I don't think that would get you limited if you bet under, unless you just go insane on the number of how much you bet. But there's going to be opportunity all season, which is fun and is good for those that are able to check out these projections.
Now, how about this? Do we want to stick with the Wisconsin game here, or do we want to head to the final game that we want to talk about tonight, which is the Michigan State Florida Atlantic game?
Yeah, let's pivot to Michigan State. The only other Wisconsin player that's interesting is Tyler Van Dyke. And you don't have to look at it. I'll talk through it. He's the Miami transfer. He's one of those older Tanner Mordecai types where he was there last year at their quarterback. I think we like his over in passing a little bit, but with the blowout potential, just not for me, wouldn't be worth releasing just because the number's around 240. I think we have around 260 or something like that. So nothing egregious, but it's something that's interesting if you wanted to get involved with the passing game.
Sounds good. And so we'll head to Michigan. Where do you want to go here, Chris? And also, just want to point out, we got around over on YouTube here. We got around 69 people. Very nice viewership number. And we certainly have an active chat. Thank you guys. CC, Ian, Yahtzee, Matt, John, Chris, all of you in here. Don't forget to smash that like button. And if you're not already a subscriber, hit that subscribe button too, because we've got so much good content coming for you this season between our show here for college football. Now, starting next week with the NFL season, Derek Hardy's back, and we are going to be doing the Blitz right after this show. It's going to be at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. So this show will lead into that. And then we have a whole bunch of other stuff. I'm going to be doing a fun Sunday morning, Sunday football live show that we're going to be testing out here and seeing if we can't do some in-game betting and do a little bit of gambling red zone. And this Sunday, we have a very, very special show for you that I will get into in just a little bit here. But for now, let's go to that Michigan game, Michigan State.
But yeah, I was going to say, you got to watch out. Sparty will come for you. I know we have some Spartan fans in the CFB Alpha chat, so you got to watch out.
All my grandparents, all my mom's side of the family are all Buckeyes, so I don't really care about anything.
So you probably did that on purpose. So this is an interesting offense. One that I would want to see before releasing, hence why you're not going to see it in the tool yourselves this week, especially with it being tonight, right? Aiden Childs. This is essentially Oregon State has moved to Michigan State. The coaching staff, the top quarterback, the top tight end, who's really good, maybe a couple other random players like an offensive lineman or two. They have moved over they've all transferred and followed Jonathan Smith, who's a good younger coach. I think he'll be successful with Michigan State. So we don't quite know what they're going to do yet. We don't have a depth chart. So even more murkiness. But I think this Jerron Glover number is kind of interesting. We have him at 2.1 receptions for 30.8 yards. I think we would like that under. He's the presumed number 2 receiver, but he's probably the third option, maybe fourth option overall through the passing game. Because this Jack Veiling tight end is a really good one. And he was with Jonathan Smith last year at Oregon State. If you wanted to get involved with the Michigan State game, Glover's probably the best way to do it. They have Antonio Gates' kid on the roster. He's it's Antonio Gates Jr., not surprisingly. So, and a really good young freshman, 4-star, I believe, Nick Marsh. So until we get the depth chart, it's a little murky, but I think that 35.5 is interesting.
Yeah, with the projection we got here, Caesars is looking pretty good there, 19% edge, which again, it's It's props and projections. We're not dealing with the scalpel that is the unabated line for main markets. We are dealing with the hatchet that is props. So it's not a true 19% edge, but that's telling me that's large enough, significant that we can bet it.
Yeah, and what's really interesting about this is Aiden Childs, their quarterback. He should be very good for them. He's a good runner. He was quoted as saying bet the over this week. He was interviewed and just said,
Oh,
"Hey,
I
bet
heard
the
about
over."
this.
So just a fun little sidebar thought. When you see guys be very confident, and I mean he's very talented, so hey, go for it. His number is like 207 yards. I'm not saying bet the over, but it's a little bit low of a number for a guy that's saying, "Hey, bet the over." You know, like
Yeah.
you
Chris
have to do a
Moxley in
whole
the chat right now saying Childs overs.
Child's overs. Yeah. Hey, Mox. Yeah, Mox. I know Mox is big on and that whole group is big on Childs. So not surprising.
Mhm.
There is a maybe look at rushing yards. Kayron Lynch Adams was. I saw a prop pop up for him at some point. I'm not sure if he has anything available. Yeah. So he's the second running back for Michigan State. He is a UMass transfer. If his lines pop up, those unders would seem interesting to me. We have him for, let's see, 37 rushing yards as their RB2. I think they're going to want to ground and pound with Nate Carter, who's the running back one. But I think some of these sites put out something for Kayron Lynch Adams, thinking that, he was on UMass last year. I think he was 1,000-yard rusher or close to it. So I think they probably just got ahead of themselves thinking that he would be the presumed number one, but he's not. So I think it's time to talk Alabama. I think give the people what they want. Let's talk Alabama.
Are we going rushing, receiving? Where do you want to go here with Bama?
Let's go receiving. I think the most interesting lines here are in the passing game.
Now, I'm curious what you think of Alabama as a whole. Nick Saban came out and was like, this is not a playoff team.
It's a brand new offense. And Kalen DeBoer from Washington, it's just hard to be super productive and win a bunch in the first season, but it is Alabama. They got a bunch of stars and great players. So I don't know. They have one hell of a schedule. There's some of these SEC teams, especially with the addition of Oklahoma and Texas, it's the schedule is insane. But the guy I want to talk about the most is this Jeremy Bernard. He's at the bottom there. He had some lines open up. My guess is they might have gotten taken down because I think they were not very good.
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything up for him.
So we'll talk through it real quick. So we have him at 5.1 catches for 82 yards. He's the presumed like Roma Dunze, Jalen McMillan, like number one guy for them. He was with Washington last year, transfers over and follows Kalen DeBoer. He had a big spring game, catching passes from Jalen Milroe, obviously. The number was sitting around 55.5, which is just not anywhere near what it should be. Hence why we think we had it at 82.3. So if you have any Jeremy lines come out and it's around that mid 50s, mid 60s, I would think that's a really nice over to consider. The top 2 or 3 guys in this offense, in theory, should see like 20 to 25% of targets. And Jalen Milroe has a good deep ball, and this is a great matchup against Western Kentucky. The reason why we're not syncing this and providing this to concierge and premium members is because there's no depth chart. We have no idea who the number 2 or number 3 receiver is. And there's also a running back injury that might that would impact the starter. So we think Ryan Williams and Kobe Prentice are the number 2 and 3, but reports out of the fall camp kind of leans on Ryan Williams and Cole Adams. Cole Adams would be super surprising, but we're working off nothing. Like we're just working off of random beat reporters and opinions. So that's why we're not releasing them. The running back injury to watch is Jam Miller. Mm-hmm. This should be a little bit of a 1A, 1B running back group with Justice Haynes being the top guy. But Jam Miller should see enough usage when healthy to impact Justice Haynes lines. But if he's healthy, if he's not healthy, then Haynes could have a huge game. Maybe they pass more. So that's why we are deciding to just not release it, not risk it, because we don't know when we'll get it. And so we'll wait and see on that.
We've got 48.5 yards on Prop Builder and Fliff and B3 from Jeremy Bernard here. What are you thinking?
I would think that's a really good That's a really good over. We don't typically love overs, so if we like an over, then it's typically pretty good. Yeah, this is one of those guys that like if you can find an alt line, he has the potential to have like a huge game. Um,
Ooh.
so I think if you could find an alt line 150-ish, something like that, like for fun, throw a little bit on it. I think
Mhm.
that would be an interesting alt line. I had one last week. It didn't work out. Apologies, Buffet the Ashlock. But I think Jeremy Bernard against Western Kentucky could certainly do it. I mean, you saw what Washington did last year, right?
Yeah.
Just yards everywhere. So
Yeah. Matthew G says, check your locals. There are some. There's a longest reception, 22.5 yards out there as well.
probably, I don't know much about what to think about longest reception type numbers, and like whether or not to bet them.
Yeah. It's a
But
tougher market to predict.
yeah, Jeremy's definitely you're going to be your bigger play type. He's going to be deep. I think his spring game was like 3 for 90 and a touchdown, and
Jeez.
he played like 2 series or essentially. So like,
Easy.
I think he's definitely going to be more of your big play type. So 22.5 maybe, but again, I would just stay away from those numbers typically.
Yeah. So anything more from Bama here that you want to get into, or do we want to move on?
So we do really like the Jalen Milroe over pass yards.
Mhm.
We have it around 264, and I want to say it's 240. These are tough because they could just, I mean, this one defensive touchdown, one long rushing touchdown, and all of a sudden, like Jalen Milroe might throw it 15 times.
Mhm.
So those are always tough, but we do technically like that we have it at 264. So that's something interesting if you want to have a little bit on it. Completions. Ooh, let's see.
By the way, Yahtzee says 100 plus yards is plus 650 on DraftKings for Jeremy.
100 yards. Yeah, I think that's a really appealing. Yeah. So we have 19.8 completions. What's it going to pump out for us? Yeah. So we like it.
Out and over.
Yeah, not surprising.
Mm-hmm.
I will say people have asked me, hey, what would you recommend betting? We did a really good job with WNBA numbers and showing like the success and production if you bet like this tier, etc.
Mm-hmm.
I would say it's kind of like blackjack. I think like stick to your guns, right? Like however you're gonna do it. If you're gonna hit on 12 or not, like you should just do it every time. And I would say 10% and above is typically that number, but I don't know, 7-8%. What's really the difference? It's sometimes it's not all that much of a difference. So
yeah, it's a little bit negligible with some of these props. So 12%. Yeah, I could definitely take this over as well. I'm excited to jump on some Jeremy overs after this. Any other guys here for Bama, or do we want to move on?
No, let's move on. I think the last one is UNLV, a little random one, a night game on Saturday. This one's not being released because we have no idea who well, I should say we don't know the confirmed quarterback. I've had people tell me it'll be Sluka, who's the transfer from Holy Cross. Could you find, by the way, maybe a more different, culturally different transfer spot? Holy Cross to UNLV. He is a run first guy who's had success in the past against FBS teams. Like he had a good game against Buffalo last year. He had a good game against Boston College 2 years ago. The problem with projecting UNLV is that like if it's Matthew Sluka, he's going to run it a good bit more than if it's Haj Malik Williams, who's the backup that's in contention for the job. So that's why we can't release it. There's just too much indecision. We don't know how that is truly going to impact it, whoever the quarterback will be. But I do think if you go to receiver, there's a receiver and there's a running back that are interesting lines. So whichever you want to target first.
We're in the receiver first.
So yeah, Ricky White. Always.
We're showing a good edge here on his under.
This is a true alpha receiver. This guy was considering going to Notre Dame, which is funny to think about the fact that like we can have the conversation that he was considering transferring to Notre Dame, but that was the case. So he's very talented. He actually went to Michigan State before UNLV. He's like your low 30s to mid 30s type of usage guy. He's that much of an alpha. If Sluka is the quarterback, there's serious doubts about how successful the pass offense will be in Sluka getting him the ball. So That's something to watch out for.
Mhm.
Kaleo Balunge, he's their tight end. This is another one of those weird tight end props that just gets dropped for some reason.
Mhm.
This guy is targeted for like 6% of targets. I think it's right at 2. And it's just hard to think he'll hit that 23-yard number to beat the under there. So
Mhm.
I think that's an interesting one. He's going to see between 1 and 3 targets. It's just a
Mhm.
matter of how volatile that situation is. So I think both of those are interesting ones. The run game will be another one impacted by the quarterback, but I think there is a running back for UNLV that his over is actually kind of interesting.
Okay, let's roll over.
So Jaden Thomas. So he is as a freshman last year, he had like 12 touchdowns. He's used more in the short yardage game. We have it as a split. We have it as like a running back split. So he's not getting heavy usage. We still slightly like that over.
Mhm.
I want to say that number started a little bit lower too, but
Well, let's see, because we have the beauty of the line history. Yeah, it was at 46.5.
so slightly, yeah. Oh yeah, I
Mhm.
forgot that we can do that, which by the way is a really fun,
Yeah,
just to see, hey, are you betting before the dip or after the dip type of thing,
yeah,
right?
a fantastic tool. Like you can just hit it, and you can see exactly all of the moves that have been made there.
Yeah, so I do think it'll be a committee. I'm not intimidated by Houston's defense, and so I think that his over there is slightly interesting if you wanted something at night. We are releasing Houston's lines
Mhm.
to Concierge and Premium, so we won't talk about them. But anybody that follows me or knows me, I'm a huge Donovan Smith fan, just for fantasy purposes.
Mhm.
He's like the Justin Fields of college football. Like he's an absolutely horrible quarterback, but he will somehow end up with like 30 fantasy points just because he's a good runner.
Mhm. And so, yeah, speaking of fantasy and DFS, John Charles says he doesn't have access to his yards, but there's an over 11.5 attempts at even money. Um, could be interesting there. That looks like it might be might be worth a play.
Yeah, that'll be a little tight.
Mhm.
But we have it at 14.6, so there's a gap there for sure.
Yeah, the risk you run is Houston forcing them to air the ball out.
Yeah, or Sluka's the quarterback and runs it 20 times.
Exactly.
Like I think we have Sluka around 10 or 12 carries,
Mhm.
and we haven't seen it, right? They call it the go-go offense. It's really super productive with Brennan. I want to say his name is Brennan Thomas as
Mhm.
the offensive coordinator, but he adapts well to his players. So from an offensive standpoint, I think they'll score. It's just a matter of, how do they do it? Do they just hammer the quarterback type of thing or what?
Yeah. Okay. I've got the DFS projection set up here. He's looking at Marion there, and the other thing that you mentioned there about the things we're releasing, the things we're not releasing. So if you are watching us and you are a subscriber and you're sitting here like, hey, they're talking about plays that I don't have, that's because we won't talk about lines that you are paying to get the projections for. We're going to be talking about games that maybe we're unsure. We don't want to release those projections, things like that. So first off, we're not giving away anything from your subscription, and second off, you can come in here and ask questions if you want. So we've got a whole bunch of different ways for you to get as much value as possible here. And if you're not already a member, you're going to get a whole lot more value if you do go and subscribe. So why don't you to use the link in the description of this video? You can schedule a one-on-one demo. Take advantage of our NFL early bird sale. $650 going to get you the entire NFL regular season, and that's not broken down by sport. You get all of the tools, the props tools that I've showed you here, our wonderful DFS tools right here, and of course, main markets, the odds screen, the unabated line, the whole shebang. You've got it all for $650 for every sport until the end of the NFL regular season. But right now, let's fire up the DFS simulator and let's see if we can find anything. I'm going to switch it solely to college football here. And we got some edges here. There's definitely a little bit of correlation, so I wouldn't necessarily put all of these in the same play, but we've got some stuff like lower receiving yards on Ricky White, lower receiving yards on Savion Williams, higher rushing yards on Cam Cook, lower receiving yard. There's some good correlation there between the lower receiving yards and the higher rushing yards, right?
Yeah, and we talked about it earlier. There's similar. There's going to be a lot of times where we are just under on passing game for a
Mm-hmm.
team, right? And so you definitely need to keep in mind, like you shouldn't bet Savion under and JP Richardson under and Dabney under. That's just not really not a smart idea. Try to separate these. So yeah, I think you can correlate like I said earlier, especially on a site like Underdog or PrizePicks, you get an added boost by going Hoover higher and Savion under. So keep that in mind as well, because that's a little bit. If you're gonna bet it anyways, put them together and see what happens.
Yeah. James Denoyer says, how much later are premium lines released than compared to Concierge? 1 more hour. Concierge gets them for an hour early. And yeah, if you want to try out Concierge as well, again, link in the description. You can get a demo. You can see everything. We can hook you up with a little bit of a trial as well. But the big thing is we are here to help, and we are here to help you boost that bankroll. And I want to remind everybody before we get out of here, because I think that we've covered everything at this point, right, Chris?
Yeah, just to give you a kind of an idea of what you might get with college football stuff. Obviously, the news is super impactful, but the projections themselves, right now we're at in counting, we're at about 15 to 18 teams. Looking at like Northwestern, UCLA, Virginia Tech, Texas A&M, Notre Dame, Florida, Miami, etc. So we're just pumping through those, getting ready for that release later today. And then, as we continue to work through the different numbers and things like that, we might release more teams and kind of let people aware in CFB Alpha or the Concierge, etc. To give you that heads up. This is, by the way, one other thing something I mentioned last year in Concierge and Premium. College football, these sites will just randomly drop new lines, new players, new lines. So what I would suggest is anybody, obviously the 1 hour is super impactful. To have those lines at multiple yards better your way than others, right, is super impactful. But they will release lines randomly throughout the day. So just if you are using Concierge or Premium, keep an eye on the different tools, kind of refresh them throughout the day if you're able to bet like that. You don't have to go to a kiosk type thing. Refresh it, see what pops up. You might find something that is really helpful, that's a really bad line that you can take advantage of. But yeah, some really fun tools. I use them every day for the work purposes, but then also after release, I'll use them for my own personal purposes on Underdog and PrizePicks.
Yeah. Also, very important thing to note there after release, because we do not front run our numbers for you guys. We want to get the most value for you.
My bet size is so small, anyways. No one's moving lines off of my bets.
Same. but nonetheless,
it's the principle.
It's the principle of the thing.
We're here for you. That's without you guys, there's no reason for me to make props. So
now, before we head out of here, one more thing I want to remind everybody of. They can see Chris again this Sunday, because we are going to be doing the Unabated fall preview here. Get an edge with us. It is going to feature, it's going to be a 2 hour plus extravaganza here to show you everything that Unabated has to offer for the fall, everything that can help you gain an edge. This isn't just a commercial for us. This is talking about how to use tools, how to gain an edge. We're going to have Rufus on talking about the new CFB simulator. Captain Jack is going to be talking about some in-game NFL tools. Derek Carty from EV Analytics is joining us to talk about the Blitz and how you can use those NFL props with our season simulator. And of course, remember, next week at noon Pacific time, 3 p.m. Eastern, he will be on here because we will be bringing back the Blitz prop show right after our CFB show that we are doing here. But this show, 5 p.m. this Sunday, be there or be square. Join us, ask your questions. We got Adam Bjorn coming on to talk about an NFL season from the other side of the book. We have so much more. Davis Maddock is going to be joining us. Our own Justin Fan might be stopping by, not quite confirmed yet. But we got a ton of guests. We got a ton of great things. I promise you, it is well worth your time to come and join us. I hope to see you there. I'm really trying. This was my brainchild and my baby, so I'm really hoping that we can push these numbers over the top, gain a bunch of new subscribers here for the channel, and, of course, get you guys a nice edge to get started on the NFL and college football season here. But for now, Chris, I think that's going to do it for us. If you want to talk to Chris even more, reach out in the Unabated Discord. You can sign up with the link in the description of this video. It is free. You do not have to be an Unabated member to get in, although if you are an Unabated member, you do get some premium and even concierge channels, depending on your membership level. But yeah, you can check out all of our stuff there. Check out all of our stuff, of course, on unabated.com. And if you want a walkthrough of all the tools, use the link in the description of this video as well. There's a lot of links in the description, but they're all right there and clearly listed for you so that you can sign up for a demo. I look forward to speaking to you because it will literally be you and me in a one-on-one Zoom talking about all of the different tools. I'll walk you through them. I'll show you how they work. I'll answer your questions. And we're here to help. We're here to support you every step of the way. But for now, Chris, this has been a fantastic first show. We will be back next week. And I'm excited. It's going to be a great season.
Yeah, a lot of good games this weekend and all season long with these kind of combined conferences. So lots of jam-packed action all season. It's been fun. Next Friday, we'll do it again.
Absolutely. We'll see you guys then. But for now, that's going to do it for us. Best of luck, everybody. Then let's cash some tickets. We'll see you next week. And we'll have NFL action with Derek Carty as well. Going to be a fun one. And hopefully see you this Sunday. Take care, everybody. Enjoy your weekend. Enjoy your holiday. And again, let's cash some tickets. Have a great week one.